The nanny fed the baby on the floor, but when the millionaire mother saw, Jessica Miller never imagined that a simple plate of pasta could change her life forever. The 22-year-old had found in the Anderson family's home not just a job, but a reason to believe she could make a difference in someone's life. It was exactly 3 in the afternoon on a Thursday when everything fell apart. Jessica had placed the colorful little plate on the kitchen floor and watched fondly as little Ethan, just 1 year and 3 months old, finally ate with an appetite for the first time in weeks. "Hi, Ethan. Yummy, huh?" she murmured softly, sitting on the floor beside the child. The baby smiled as he brought strands of pasta to his mouth with his chubby little hands, smearing tomato sauce on his clothes and face. It was the first time in 2 months Jessica had seen him so relaxed during a meal. The sound of high heels echoing down the marble hallway made her look back. Catherine Anderson appeared in the kitchen doorway like an elegant storm. Her perfectly styled brown hair and impeccable navy blue suit contrasting with the look of absolute horror on her face. "What is this?" The businesswoman's voice came out as a sharp whisper. Jessica quickly stood up, wiping her hands on the embroidered apron Catherine herself had bought for her to wear during work. "Mrs. Catherine, I can explain." "You're feeding my son on the floor like he's some kind of animal." The shout echoed through the entire mansion, making Ethan start crying in fear. Tears streamed down the baby's face as he reached his little arms out to Jessica, seeking the comfort only she seemed able to provide lately. "Mrs. Catherine, please let me explain. Ethan was having trouble eating in the high chair and—" "Trouble?" Catherine interrupted, her brown eyes flashing with indignation. "The only trouble here is that I hired someone completely unfit to care for my son." The phone was already in the woman's hand before Jessica could even form a full response. The call was answered on the first ring. "Perfect Care Agency. This is Catherine Anderson. I want to cancel Jessica Miller's contract immediately. She's treating my son like an animal, putting food on the floor for him to eat. It's unacceptable." The words hit Jessica like physical blows. 2 months of total dedication, nights spent awake when Ethan was sick, researching child development on her old phone during breaks. All of it seemed worthless in the face of the scene Catherine had witnessed. Ethan kept crying, refusing to go into his mother's arms and clinging to Jessica's jeans instead. The situation grew even more tense when the baby completely rejected the bottle Catherine tried to offer. "See what you've done? Now he won't even take his milk," the businesswoman accused, her voice laced with desperation disguised as anger. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. The afternoon turned into a nightmare as Ethan refused to eat anything at all. Catherine tried everything: fun-shaped fruit slices, imported baby food, expensive organic cookies. Nothing worked. The baby simply turned his face away and cried even harder. By 7 in the evening, Richard Anderson came home and found his wife visibly shaken in the living room. Ethan was in her arms, still hungry, but refusing to take any food. "What happened here?" the 42-year-old businessman asked, loosening his Italian silk tie. "The nanny was feeding our son on the kitchen floor, Richard, on the floor, as if he were a dog." Catherine recounted through tears of frustration. "On the floor?" Richard sank heavily into the leather armchair. "What was she thinking? You fired her, right?" "Of course I did, but now Ethan won't eat anything. I've tried everything I know." The night was long and agonizing. Ethan woke up several times crying from hunger, but systematically rejected any attempt by his parents to feed him. By 3 in the morning, Catherine was exhausted and desperate. "Richard, what if we call a doctor? He's been like this ever since Jessica left." "Do you think it's related?" "I don't know what to think anymore. All I know is our son is starving, and I can't do anything." The next morning, Catherine called the family's private pediatrician. Dr. Sarah Wilson arrived an hour later, carrying her brown leather bag and wearing a concerned expression as she assessed the baby's condition. "How long has he been refusing food?" the doctor asked, carefully examining Ethan. "Since yesterday afternoon. Coincidentally, that's when I fired the nanny. That's when I—" "Tell me exactly what happened." Catherine recounted the scene she had witnessed, hoping the doctor would confirm she had made the right decision. Instead, Dr. Sarah grew thoughtful. "Mrs. Anderson, some children develop very specific associations with environments and people during mealtimes. It's possible Ethan formed a feeding bond with the nanny. But she was feeding him on the floor. I understand your shock, but I have to ask, how was his appetite before this incident?" Catherine hesitated. The truth was she was rarely present for Ethan's meals. Her business meetings and frequent travels kept her away most of the day. Well, Jessica always told me he ate well. I never questioned it. I'll be frank, Mrs. Anderson. This baby is showing signs of feeding stress. I need to investigate if there's any history of eating difficulties. The revelation came from Margaret, the housekeeper who had worked in the home for 15 years. The 63-year-old woman, her graying hair always tied in a bun, had witnessed Jessica's daily struggle to get Ethan to eat. "Doctor, that poor girl suffered every day," Margaret said, twisting a dish towel in her hands. "The boy would cry in his high chair, spit everything out. She tried everything. She even used her own money to make different recipes." "What do you mean, Margaret?" Catherine stepped closer, realizing there was much more to the situation. Jessica came early, left late. She'd come on weekends just to be with Ethan, and on her phone, always researching how to get a child to eat. Dr. Sarah asked more questions and discovered Ethan had lost weight in recent weeks, something no one had noticed because routine checkups had been delayed due to Catherine's travel schedule. "Mrs. Catherine, I need to speak with this nanny. Where can I find her?" I don't know. I only have the agency's number. The search for Jessica took 2 days. When they finally found her, the young woman was in a small 2-room apartment in South Bronx, caring for her bedridden 80-year-old grandmother. "Jessica, I need you to tell me everything about Ethan's meals," Dr. Sarah said, sitting in the simple but clean living room. Jessica's eyes filled with tears as she spoke about the last 2 months. She pulled a slightly crumpled spiral notebook from her bag. "I wrote everything down, Doctor. Every day, every attempt." The pages revealed remarkable dedication. Jessica had meticulously documented each refusal, each cry, each failed attempt to get Ethan to eat in his high chair. March 15th. Ethan cried for 20 minutes in his high chair. He didn't eat anything at lunch. I tried fruit, baby food, crackers. Nothing worked. March 22nd. I found out he calms down when I sit on the floor near the high chair. He ate 3 spoonfuls. March 30th. I tried putting the plate on the floor. Ethan stopped crying right away and ate everything. Dr. Sarah read each note with growing admiration. The young woman had intuitively discovered something many professionals take years to understand. Some children need unconventional environments to feel safe during meals. "Jessica, where did you learn about child development?" "I didn't learn it anywhere, doctor. I just wanted Ethan to be okay. I researched a lot online, asked other nannies, and I remembered how it was at the orphanage where I grew up." The last sentence made everything click. Jessica had been raised at St. Mary's home until she was 18. There, the younger children sat on the floor in a circle during afternoon snack time, creating a sense of togetherness and safety. At the orphanage, we always took care of the little ones like that, sitting at their level, making them feel safe. Ethan reminded me so much of Michael, a baby who arrived there when I was 15. Dr. Sarah explained to Catherine that Jessica had instinctively applied a principle of child feeding psychology. Children who develop anxiety in high chairs may benefit from environments closer to the ground, where they feel safer and in control. "Mrs. Anderson, this young woman saved your son from a possible eating disorder. What she did was brilliant, even if it seems strange." Catherine felt her world crumbling around her. She had fired the person who best understood her son's needs, based only on a shallow, prejudiced impression. "Doctor, what do I do now? Ethan still isn't eating properly." Ideally, Jessica would come back, at least temporarily, to help with the feeding transition. But I understand that might be complicated after what happened. When Catherine showed up at Jessica's apartment door 3 days later, the young woman was startled. The businesswoman looked different. No makeup, her hair tied up haphazardly, wearing a simple blouse and jeans. "Jessica, I need to talk to you." "Mrs. Catherine, I didn't do anything wrong. The notebook is with the doctor. She can confirm everything." "I know. That's why I'm here." Catherine looked down at her feet. "I made a terrible mistake." The conversation that followed was one of the hardest in Catherine's life. She had to admit she had judged Jessica without understanding the situation, that she had been so absent from her son's life, she didn't notice his basic needs. "Ethan isn't eating, Jessica. For 3 days he's barely had any milk. The doctors say he's formed a feeding association with you." "How is he?" The genuine concern in Jessica's voice touched Catherine's heart. "Weak, sad. He keeps looking at the kitchen door like he's waiting for you." Jessica closed her eyes, fighting back tears. She missed the baby too, his toothless smile when he managed to pick up a piece of food on his own, his tight hugs when he was sleepy. "I want to come back, Mrs. Catherine, but I can't go through that again. I can't work afraid of being judged all the time. I understand, and you have every right not to want to come back, but I had to try. Please, at least come see Ethan. He needs you." The reunion happened the next day. When Jessica walked into the kitchen, Ethan was in Catherine's arms, quiet and noticeably thinner. The moment he saw his nanny, the baby stretched out his little arms and began babbling excitedly. "Hi, sweetheart." Jessica scooped Ethan into her arms, and he immediately rested his little head against her chest, just like he always did when he was tired. Catherine watched the scene with a mix of gratitude and pain. It was obvious there was a genuine bond between her son and that young woman she had judged so harshly. "Jessica, I'd like to make you an offer. Come back to work here, but with some changes. I want to be more present during Ethan's meals. I want to learn from you." The young woman hesitated. The offer was tempting, especially because she needed the money for her grandmother's medicine, but the humiliation was still fresh in her memory. "Mrs. Catherine, I'll come back, but with some conditions." "What are they?" "First, I want complete freedom to care for Ethan the way I think is best, including meals on the floor if necessary. Second, I don't want to be questioned in front of others. If you have any doubts, we'll talk in private." Catherine nodded immediately. She had learned a painful lesson about trusting the judgment of someone who truly knew her son. "I accept all your conditions. And one more thing, I want you to teach me. I want to be present during meals and learn how to care for Ethan better." The first meal with Catherine present was a milestone. She sat on the kitchen floor beside Jessica and Ethan, initially uncomfortable with the situation. Her expensive suits weren't made for sitting on the floor, but she was determined to understand. "See, Mrs. Catherine," Jessica explained gently, "when we sit at his level, Ethan feels safer. It's not like some giant is forcing him to eat." Ethan, happy to have his 2 favorite people nearby, ate with an appetite for the first time in days. Catherine watched, fascinated, as Jessica interacted with her son, the tender gestures, the endless patience, the way she turned the meal into a game. "How do you make it look so natural?" At the orphanage, we learn that love has nothing to do with money or fancy things. It's about being present, having patience, understanding what the child needs. Those words echoed in Catherine's mind for days. She began rearranging her schedule to be present for all of Ethan's main meals. Business meetings were rescheduled, trips cancelled. Richard, her husband, didn't understand the change. "Catherine, you're becoming obsessed. We hired the nanny precisely so we wouldn't have to worry about these things." "These things? Richard, these things are our son growing, learning, developing. I missed 2 months of his life because I was too busy to notice he was struggling." "You're exaggerating. A child who won't eat in a high chair isn't a reason for you to abandon all your professional commitments." The argument escalated when Richard came home one afternoon and found Catherine sitting on the kitchen floor, eating pasta with her hands alongside Ethan and Jessica. "This is ridiculous, Catherine. You're the CEO of a multinational company and you're playing house on the floor." Ethan, frightened by his father's raised voice, began to cry. Jessica immediately scooped him up, but Richard stopped her. "Enough! This boy needs to learn there's a hierarchy in this house. And you," he pointed at Jessica, are fostering an unhealthy dependence. Richard, stop! Catherine stood up, furious. Jessica saved our son from an eating disorder. Instead of thanking her, you're being rude. An eating disorder? Catherine, you're delusional. All he needed was to be put in his high chair more firmly. Her husband's lack of sensitivity opened Catherine's eyes to something she had ignored for years. Richard saw Ethan more as a successful project than as a child with complex emotional needs. That night, after Jessica had left and Ethan was asleep, the couple had the hardest conversation of their marriage. Richard, when was the last time you played with Ethan? When was the last time you spent time with him outside of a family photo? Catherine, I work 16 hours a day to maintain this family's lifestyle. I don't have time to sit on the floor playing pretend kitchen. And I used to work 16 hours a day too, but I realized I was missing our son's childhood. Don't you think it's worth trying to change? No. I think you're having a midlife crisis and projecting it onto Ethan's upbringing. We hired competent staff precisely so we wouldn't have to deal with these basic things. The word basic echoed in Catherine's mind. To Richard, caring for their own child was a basic task, delegatable, unimportant for important parents like them. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. The marital crisis deepened when Richard issued an ultimatum. Either you start acting like the successful woman you've always been, or I'll consider this marriage pointless. Catherine stayed silent for a long time. The threat was clear, but for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of being alone. She had discovered something more important than marriage, a real connection with her son. Richard, I won't change. Ethan needs present parents, not well-paid employees. If you can't understand that, maybe we really should rethink this marriage. Catherine's decision to prioritize active motherhood had immediate professional consequences. She lost 2 important contracts due to cancelled meetings and had to delegate more responsibilities to her team. But the changes in Ethan were remarkable. The baby flourished with his mother's constant attention. He started speaking more words, interacting better with others, and showing a joy he hadn't before. Jessica watched it all with growing satisfaction. Her intuition had been right, and more importantly, she had helped reunite a mother and son who were drifting apart. Mrs. Catherine, can I say something? Of course, Jessica. You're becoming the mother Ethan always needed, and that's more important than any business contract. The words moved Catherine deeply. She had spent her whole life measuring success in financial terms, but was now discovering that true fulfillment came from genuine human connections. The turning point came when Ethan fell ill with a bad flu. Instead of leaving everything to Jessica, Catherine cancelled an international trip to stay by her son's side. For 3 days and nights, she alternated shifts with Jessica, learning to recognize every cry, every need, every little sign of how Ethan was feeling. Mrs. Catherine, go rest a bit. I'll stay with him, Jessica offered on the second night. No, Jessica, I want to stay. I need to learn to be the mother he deserves. It was during one of these nighttime vigils that Catherine had a profound revelation about her own childhood. Memories of the nanny who raised her flooded back like an emotional avalanche. She remembered Miss Dorothy, the kind black woman who had been more of a mother to her than her own mother, always busy with social events and trips. Dorothy was the one who stayed up when she was sick, who invented games on rainy days, who truly knew her. The irony was devastating. Catherine had become exactly the kind of absent mother she had always criticized in her own mother. And worse, she had almost lost the chance to be for Ethan what Dorothy had been for her. Jessica, she said one morning as they prepared Ethan's breakfast, I want to tell you something. Catherine shared her memories of Miss Dorothy, how the nanny had been fundamental in her emotional upbringing, how she had learned about love and care through that simple yet wise woman. I don't want Ethan to have to seek from an employee the love he should receive from his parents. I want him to have both you and me, each contributing in different ways to his development. Jessica was moved by the trust Catherine was placing in her. For the first time, she felt seen as a partner in raising Ethan, not just as an employee. Mrs. Catherine, may I suggest something? Of course. How about we create a routine where all main meals are family time? You, me, and Ethan. That way he learns that eating is a moment of togetherness, not an obligation. The idea was perfect. They agreed that breakfast, lunch, and dinner would be sacred moments. Phones turned off, all attention focused on Ethan and family. The transformation in their family dynamic was remarkable. Ethan began associating meals with happy, safe moments. His eating improved drastically, and he started accepting new foods easily. Richard, who had initially resisted the changes, began realizing he was missing something important. Ethan clearly preferred his mother's and Nanny's company, which made him uncomfortable. "Catherine, Ethan doesn't even come to me when I get home. Richard, you come home when he's already asleep. On weekends, you're at the office or playing golf. How do you expect him to bond with you?" "I work to give him the best." "Ethan doesn't need the best money can buy. He needs the best we can give. Time, attention, love." The tension in their marriage grew when Richard started making snide jokes in front of friends and co-workers about Catherine turning into her own son's nanny. "Folks, you won't believe this. My wife now eats on the floor with the baby, literally on the kitchen floor," he said during a business dinner. The public humiliation was the last straw for Catherine's patience. She had changed for the better, discovered the joy of being a present mother, and her husband was mocking her publicly. "Richard, either you stop these mean jokes or our conversation will take a very different turn. Catherine, all you talk about now is baby food and parenting methods. You've become boring." "I've become a mother, Richard, a real mother. If that bothers you, the problem is yours, not mine." The breaking point came when Richard arrived home one day to find Catherine, Jessica, and Ethan having a picnic on the living room floor, complete with a checkered blanket. "This has gone too far," he exploded. "Catherine, you're making a fool of yourself." Ethan, frightened by the shouting, began to cry. Immediately, both Catherine and Jessica moved to comfort him, completely ignoring Richard. "See this?" he continued, even angrier. "My own son doesn't even recognize me as an authority in this house." "Authority is earned through presence and care, not yelling," Catherine replied, gently rocking Ethan. "Enough. I can't take this nonsense anymore. Either things go back to normal or I'm leaving this house." The silence that followed was deafening. Catherine looked at Ethan in her arms, at Jessica by her side, at the picnic blanket on the floor. All of it represented the happiest moments she had experienced as a mother. "Then leave, Richard. Because this is normal. At least it's the normal I want for my son." Richard hadn't expected that answer. In every previous argument, Catherine had tried to find middle ground. Now she was clearly choosing a side. "Are you serious?" "Completely. Ethan needs to grow up seeing that true love exists, that family is about caring for each other, not about appearances and status. If you can't understand that, it really is better for you to leave." Richard packed his bags that same night and went to a bachelor apartment he kept downtown. The house grew quieter, but paradoxically more peaceful. Ethan, who initially missed his father's presence, soon adjusted to the new routine. Catherine made sure he had regular video calls with Richard, but didn't force in-person visits that made the child uncomfortable. "Mrs. Catherine, do you think you did the right thing?" Jessica asked a few days after the separation. "Jessica, you taught me that true love is about being present, about understanding the needs of the person you love." Richard couldn't offer that to Ethan. It was better for him to have an honest but absent father than one who was physically present but emotionally unavailable. The following weeks were a time of adjustment but also discovery. Catherine realized she could balance work and motherhood when she had clear priorities. She restructured her entire company to work more efficiently with fewer hours. Jessica, in turn, flourished in her role as a respected and valued caregiver. Catherine significantly increased her salary and offered benefits like health insurance for her and her grandmother. "Jessica, you're not just a nanny. You're part of the family. I want you to feel valued and respected." The most significant change came when Catherine decided to document their journey and turn it into a social project. She began developing a training program for nannies and caregivers based on their lived experience. "Jessica, would you like to help me teach others about childcare? Your experience and intuition could help so many families." The proposal excited Jessica. She had discovered she had a natural talent for understanding children and wanted to share it with others. The project started small, with monthly workshops at Catherine's company. Jessica taught alternative feeding techniques, while Catherine spoke about balancing career and active motherhood. The response was immediate. Other working mothers began seeking consultations, wanting to learn how to be more present in their children's lives without completely abandoning work. "Mrs. Catherine, we're making a difference in other families' lives," Jessica remarked, beaming after a particularly successful workshop. "We are, Jessica. And all of this started because you had the courage to do what you believed was right, even if it seemed strange to others." The project's growth drew media attention. Parenting magazines began interviewing Catherine about her family revolution. She always made sure to mention Jessica as the project's co-creator. "The real expert here is Jessica," she said in every interview. "She taught me that academic knowledge about children can't replace genuine love and careful observation." The program's success caught the interest of major companies looking to implement more humane family policies. Catherine began receiving offers for corporate speaking engagements and consultations. But the greatest recognition came from an unexpected source, the very community where Jessica had grown up. St. Mary's Home invited them to speak about childcare with the young women preparing to work as nannies. "Girls," Jessica said to the young women gathered in the same hall where she had spent her childhood, "you hold immense power in your hands. You can be the difference between a happy child and one who merely grows up without emotional development." Catherine watched with emotion as Jessica shared her story, from the difficult days at the orphanage to discovering her calling for caring for children. Never let anyone make you feel inferior for being nannies or caregivers. You're shaping the future, one child at a time. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The impact of their work expanded when a television channel proposed a show about families in transformation. Catherine hesitated at first, worried about Ethan's exposure, but eventually agreed when she saw the educational potential. "Jessica, would you be willing to appear on TV with me? The show wants to highlight our partnership in raising Ethan." "Mrs. Catherine, I don't know. I've never been on television. What if I say something silly?" "Silly? Jessica, you saved my son from an eating disorder using nothing but intuition and love. If that's not wisdom, I don't know what is." The show aired during prime time and sparked a nationwide response. The phone at Catherine's agency wouldn't stop ringing with requests for consultations from families across the country. But it was one specific call that changed everything for Jessica. A prestigious university was offering her a full scholarship to study education, inspired by her story. "Jessica, you have to accept this," Catherine insisted when she heard the offer. "You have a natural talent that needs academic development." "But what about Ethan and our work?" "Ethan will still be here when you graduate, and our work will only grow with you bringing formal knowledge to your practical experience." The decision was tough, but Jessica eventually accepted the scholarship. Catherine rearranged her routine to spend more time with Ethan, applying everything she'd learned from the young nanny. During Jessica's 4 years in college, they kept the project alive. Catherine handled the administrative side while Jessica contributed content and research on weekends and breaks. Ethan grew up with two strong maternal figures, Catherine, who had learned to balance professional success with hands-on motherhood, and Jessica, who represented unconditional love and intuitive understanding of children. Jessica's graduation was a celebration for the entire extended family they had built. Catherine threw a party attended by all the families their work had touched. "Mrs. Catherine," Jessica said in her graduation speech, "you gave me so much more than a job. You gave me the chance to discover my true calling and treated me like family. Jessica, you gave me so much more than care for Ethan. You taught me how to be a real mother. Our partnership transformed two lives that were lost in different directions." The project, which had started because of a misunderstanding over a plate of spaghetti on the floor, had become a national movement valuing compassionate childcare. Jessica, now a graduate in education, officially took over as the academic coordinator of the program. Catherine remained focused on expansion and financial sustainability. Richard, who had kept his distance during the years of separation, began showing interest in rekindling their relationship when he saw the project's success and Ethan's obvious happiness. "Catherine, I made a mistake. Can I have a second chance?" The conversation happened during one of Richard's monthly visits with Ethan. The boy, now 5, was playing in the garden while his parents talked. "Richard, you can have a second chance as Ethan's father. As for us as a couple, that will depend on a lot of things. I'm willing to change. I want to learn to be the father Ethan deserves." Catherine set clear conditions. Richard would have to attend the workshops on active fatherhood, reorganize his schedule to be present for family meals at least 3 times a week, and treat Jessica with the respect she deserved. "Jessica isn't just an employee, Richard. She's part of the family. If you come back, you'll have to fully accept that." The process of rebuilding the family was gradual and not without challenges. Richard had to learn to suppress his authoritarian instincts and develop patience to interact with Ethan in a more loving way. Jessica initially kept her distance, still hurt by past humiliations. But when she saw Richard genuinely trying to change, she began giving him a chance to redeem himself. "Jessica," Richard said during a family lunch, "I want to apologize for how I treated you before. You saved my son, and I was too blind to see it." "Mr. Richard, what matters is that you're now trying to be a better father to Ethan. That's what counts." The family's reconciliation coincided with greater professional recognition for the project. They received a national award for innovation in early childhood education, and Jessica was invited to speak at international conferences. "Jessica, do you remember that day I found you feeding Ethan on the floor?" Catherine asked during a trip to a conference in New York City. "How could I forget? I thought my life was over." Actually, our lives began that day. It was when we discovered there's a different way to raise children, to be a family, to find true success. The international recognition brought opportunities for expansion into other countries, but Catherine and Jessica decided to keep their focus on the United States, where there was still so much work to be done. They established a network of training centers in different states, always prioritizing the education of caregivers from humble backgrounds, just as Jessica had once been. "Our mission is to democratize knowledge about childcare," Jessica explained in her talks. "Every child deserves to be cared for with love and knowledge, no matter their family's social class." Ethan grew up witnessing this work and developed a special sensitivity to social issues from an early age. By 7, he was already helping with the project's activities, playing with children whose mothers attended the workshops. "Mommy, why don't some kids have nannies like Jessica?" he asked one day. "Because not all families can afford caregivers, sweetheart. That's why we're teaching more people how to care for children properly, so more families can have access to it." Catherine's answer reflected the growth of her social awareness. The businesswoman who once lived in a bubble of privilege had become an advocate for early childhood. The project expanded to include training for parents, not just professional caregivers. Catherine and Jessica developed specialized workshops for mothers and fathers who wanted to be more involved in raising their children. "We realized it's no use just training nannies if parents themselves don't know how to connect with their kids," Catherine explained to social investors interested in supporting the project. During one of these workshops, a young mother approached Jessica with tears in her eyes. "Jessica, my 3-year-old daughter has never eaten properly. The doctors say she's just being picky, but after hearing your story, I think it might be anxiety. Can you help me?" "Of course. Let's try some different techniques. Sometimes, the solution is simpler than we think." Situations like this happened often, confirming that their work was making a real, tangible difference in people's lives. The methodology they developed began to be studied in universities as a successful case of social innovation. Jessica Miller was invited to teach as a visiting professor in pedagogy courses. "Who would have thought that girl from the orphanage would become a college professor?" Catherine remarked proudly after attending Jessica's first class. "Mrs. Catherine, this was only possible because you believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself." Their partnership had transcended professional boundaries and blossomed into a genuine friendship, built on mutual respect and shared goals. When Ethan turned 10, they organized a special party that also celebrated 5 years of the project. Hundreds of families impacted by their work were in attendance. During the celebration, A heartfelt surprise moved everyone. Former children from the orphanage where Jessica had grown up appeared to honor her. Many of them now worked as trained caregivers through the program. "Jessica, you always said we'd make something of ourselves," said Emily, one of the girls who had grown up with her in the orphanage. "You were the first to succeed, and you paved the way for all of us." Jessica's emotion was contagious. Catherine realized the project had become far greater than they ever imagined. It was a movement of real social change. The recognition peaked when they were invited to speak before Congress about early childhood public policies. The girl who had grown up without a family was now influencing policies that would affect millions of children. "Honorable members of Congress," Jessica said in her speech, "a child well cared for in their early years grows into a more confident, productive, and happy adult. Investing in childcare is investing in the future of our country." Catherine watched from the audience, remembering the first time she saw Jessica feeding Ethan on the floor. Who could have imagined that seemingly simple moment would spark such transformation? After their presentation, they were approached by representatives from international organizations interested in replicating their methodology abroad. "Jessica, I think it's time we consider expanding internationally," Catherine suggested during their flight back to New York City. "Mrs. Catherine, sometimes I feel like this is all a dream, an orphan girl influencing international public policies." "It's not a dream, Jessica. It's the result of hard work, dedication, and most of all, your courage to do what you believed was right that day in the kitchen." The international project began with a pilot in Canada, where similar issues of family disconnection were being identified. Jessica traveled to Washington, D.C. to train the first groups of local caregivers. The experience confirmed that the challenges they had identified in the United States were universal: overworked parents, children cared for by unprepared individuals, and a lack of emotional connection in families. Back in the United States, they compiled their methodology into a book that became a reference in the field. Caring is Loving: A Revolution in Early Childhood. Hit bookstore shelves and quickly became a bestseller. "Jessica, when I wrote your biography in the book, I got emotional remembering our whole journey," Catherine shared during the launch. "To me, the most incredible part is that it all started because I just wanted Ethan to eat well. I never imagined it would turn into a national movement." The book's success led to invitations for TV shows and podcasts. Jessica, who once feared public speaking, had become a natural and captivating communicator. During one interview, the host asked about the moment that changed everything. "Jessica, if you could go back to that day in the kitchen, would you do anything differently?" "No. I'd do exactly the same thing. I'd place the little plate on the floor and sit beside Ethan so he'd feel safe. Because true love sometimes has to break social rules to reach where it's needed most." The response went viral on social media and sparked a spontaneous campaign of parents sharing unconventional yet tender moments with their children. Ethan, now a teenager, watched with pride as Jessica received recognition. To him, she had always been far more than a nanny. She was a second mother, a mentor, a friend. "Jessica, when I grow up, I want to work with you on the project," he declared during a family dinner. "Ethan, you can choose any profession you want, but I'm happy you want to help other families grow closer," Jessica replied, moved. The continuity of their work was assured. A new generation, represented by Ethan, had grown up understanding the importance of human care and genuine presence. Richard, who had completely transformed as a father, sometimes reflected on how he had nearly lost everything due to pride and prejudice. "Catherine, sometimes I think about what our life would have been like if I hadn't changed. Ethan would have been an unhappy child, you'd have been a frustrated mother, and I'd have remained an absent father forever. Richard, what matters is that you did change. And even more importantly, you understood that being a father isn't about authority. It's about love and presence." Their marriage had rebuilt itself on entirely new foundations. Richard learned to cherish simple family moments, and Catherine learned to forgive and give second chances. Jessica, now 28, had become a national reference in early childhood education. But for her, the greatest success remained seeing Ethan grow up happy and well-adjusted. "Mrs. Catherine, do you remember when Ethan was a baby and cried so much in his high chair? How could I forget? You were the one who realized he needed to feel secure on the floor. Exactly. And look at him now, a confident, affectionate boy who isn't afraid to show love. That's the result of all the love he received from the start. Jessica's observation was spot on. Ethan had grown up in an environment where affection was valued, where his individuality was respected, where he felt truly loved. The project continued to grow and impact lives. 10 years after that first plate of spaghetti on the floor, thousands of families had been transformed by the methodology developed by Catherine and Jessica. During an international conference on early childhood, a young mother approached Jessica with a photo. "Jessica, this is my daughter eating on our kitchen floor. She had feeding issues, and after I applied your technique, everything changed. Thank you for having the courage to do something different." Moments like this reminded Jessica why it had all begun. A child who needed to feel safe to eat, and a nanny who dared to break conventions to meet that need. Catherine and Jessica's story became an example of how misunderstandings can turn into opportunities for growth, how prejudices can be overcome through respectful coexistence, and how true love always finds a way to prevail. End of story. Now tell us, do you believe Catherine made the right choice by prioritizing her son's well-being over social conventions? What lessons did this story bring to your life? Share your thoughts on motherhood, work, and the importance of being truly present for those we love in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartwarming stories.